I went with a friend to Soho Theatre to watch a comedy show by a comedian called Paul Curry, a comedian that we didn't know before the show. We went there and we sat through this show that was supposed to be a non-verbal comedy, in which the comedian used different gadgets in different parts of the show. And then at some point during the show, near the end, he brought out of a box a flag of Ukraine, followed by a flag of the Palestinian Authority. As soon as he brought them out, as quickly as he brought those flags out, he put them back in the box and then moved on with the show. About 5 minutes later, the show was over. So people got on their feet, people were clapping. Me and my friend, we were still pretty upset about the comparison between Ukraine and Palestine. We didn't clap, we just stayed in our seats, silently holding hands, nothing more than that. So, while Paul Curry is still on the mic, he speaks for the first time during this non-verbal show. He thanks the crowd for coming, for clapping, and then turns to us, to me and my friend, singles us out, points at us and says, thank you to these two for not clapping and for not standing up. At that point, we were pretty nervous about him just singling us out. I replied, thank you for that Palestine flag. And I replied that in the hopes that that would convey why we're not clapping. It's not about the art, it's just about the political statement. Then Paul Curry looked pretty confused. He asked some questions like, am I being sarcastic? Still on the mic, still in front of the entire crowd. And then he just completely lost it. He started screaming. He screamed that he's from Belfast and therefore he knows everything about ceasefires, started chanting ceasefire now with the crowd and started using swear words. So he yelled at us, get the F out of the theater, get the F out of my show, ceasefire now. So me and my friend started gathering our things while he's still screaming and chanting with the crowd, ceasefire now and free Palestine. So while we were gathering our things, we realized that the only way out from where we were sat, while the entire crowd was still in their seats, was through the stage. So we had to actually cross the stage right in front of him in a punch distance to get to the exit. And while we were crossing the stage, Paul Curry was again waving his Palestine flag and waving it at us and shouting at me, Mother F, you're gonna have to see this flag again on your way out, and continuing to shout with the crowd and chant with the crowd. While some people from the crowd started shouting shame at us. And then we just basically ran out of the theater.
Palestine will live forever!
It occurred to me when we were fleeing the theater that it was a very dangerous situation. There are about 200 people in the crowd. Most of them have had a few drinks since this was a comedy show on a Saturday night. Some people were already incited, so a lot of people joined in the chanting with Paul Curry. And it seemed like this could turn at any moment. So I think at that point, I was really just focused on getting ourselves out of there, getting as far away from the theater as possible, as quickly as possible, just for physical safety. So after we managed to get out of the theater room, we tried to speak to staff at the theater. The staff didn't really understand the gravity of what happened. They just gave us email addresses to complain later and send us out to the streets at the same time as all the other attendees of that show were released into the streets. So when we got out, we immediately recognized some of the people and we saw some very unfriendly faces, like people were staring at us in a very unfriendly way. So actually we realized that we can't linger. So we just ran for about 15 minutes as far away from the theater as possible until we got to like a clean, empty, silent street. And then we just stood there, we hugged, we try to kind of relax. The incident happened on a Saturday night. Since it was my birthday weekend, I didn't want to deal with it too much immediately. I had like plans for that same night, I had plans for Sunday. I tried to kind of not let that incident ruin my weekend. But by Monday, I realized that I have to do something. I have to talk. I have to find a lawyer, something. So I reached out to help on some WhatsApp groups and mail groups that have other Jewish people from London in them. By the time on Monday afternoon that I started talking to people, people immediately replied to me being like, where were you? This story had already exploded over Twitter. There's a post by the Campaign Against Antisemitism on Instagram. There's an article on the Daily Mail. And what turns out happened was that other Jewish members of the audience did the right thing earlier and reached out to Campaign Against Antisemitism. So by the time I was ready to talk, actually, the entire PR has been managed. So Campaign Against Antisemitism have already posted about Paul Curry, and the Daily Mail had already done the article. So at that point, it was actually really easy to just come out and tell the story and get the media attention that it deserved. In addition, Campaign Against Antisemitism gave me legal advice, helped me with the police investigation. So everything was there and ready. I think without Campaign Against Antisemitism's support, the story would probably have died down. We wouldn't have gotten the public statement from Soho Theatre, and Paul Curry probably would still be touring this country. The situation in London is actually appalling. I've lived in this city for over 5 years now. I'm from Israel originally. And this is the first time that I'm realizing that my future is probably not here. That there's just too much hate on these streets. While I'm here, I'm kind of doing the opposite of hiding. So I'm wearing the hostages pin visibly for people to see. It's just appalling that the government and the Met Police are allowing this to go on and on and on for half a year now, every week. Just turning a blind eye to literal terrorism support on their streets. I think the work by Campaign Against Antisemitism is crucial right now. For decades and decades, and for, I guess, hundreds of years, Jews learned to be very silent, to not make a scene. And that does not work. You know, in front of the huge mobilization of the pro-Palestine supporters with probably a lot of money from Iran and Qatar, Campaign Against Antisemitism is our only small voice that tries to call out people and to call for sense, call for truth.